Hello and welcome to Central Florida Salute YouTube. I have the honor of talking to Lieutenant Colonel, retired Harv Nelson. And you're out there in Idaho. So we're doing
Correct.
this via Skype. And what did you say the weather's like in Idaho?
The weather, we had a small amount of snow this morning, about 34, 33 degrees for the morning. Colder last night, but it's a nice morning. Sun's out almost.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I got your name and everything from our good friend, Colonel Keith Oliver. And I like to, I'm going to be putting glasses on, like I said, if you don't mind. Uh, I know you served in the United States Marines, uh, two division Marine Detachment Joint Service Engineer School. Tell me about your career with the Marines. Why did you go in the Marines, and what exactly did you do in the Marines? And then I want to talk about a project you got going with your son.
Okay, thank you. Well, I had served 24 years active. It actually started before I went active in ROTC. Went in, I didn't even know the Marines were part of the Department of Navy when I had a ROTC scholarship, University of Idaho. Went on my third class cruise and my eyes were open because the 1974, it was a little rough out at sea with the Navy, and we were in Westpac, and just saw the respect to the Marines. So I wanted to came back, exchanged my anchors for a Globe and Anchor, and went through officer candidate school my junior summer, commissioned a second lieutenant at the University of Idaho, went through basic school, and that's when I met Colonel Oliver. And out in basic school, 200 Marines of all persuasions going through a platoon leader course. And that platoon leader course, uh, alphabetic platoons. And so Olivers and Nelsons were together, but we were also with the McGinnises and the O'Neills and the O'Keefes. So we had quite an Irish flavor to our platoon. We had a great time. And but as early on, recognized Colonel Oliver as another man of faith, and there are Christians in the Marine Corps, and we had a great service. I was a combat engineer. He went on to be a public affairs officer. Uh, had a excellent time, heavy equipment and other sort of things. Tour in California, tour in Okinawa. Went to I was in operations research actually for a while. Then went to LAVs. So had some time in my desert was 29 Palms, preparing some of the Marines that actually went over to Desert Storm later on. Then came back, uh, went to it was Central Command for a short period of time, 3 years between the Gulf Wars, and then we went into. Seems like I'm giving a long answer here, but highlights were command of an MWS that was in Second Maw in Cherry Point, being able to have Marines to go forward, set up a forward operating base. And then a highlight was also with the joint services in Fort Leonard Wood, training engineers, heavy equipment engineers, surveyors, and other motor transport at Fort Leonard Wood, Missouri. Some call that Fort Lost in the Woods, but Marines never
Yeah,
lost.
the
Maybe
colonel asked
bewildered a
me
little
to.
bit.
The colonel asked me to ask you about Lost in the Woods. What is that about?
Well, in Missouri, in the Ozarks, is a beautiful place, Fort Leonard Wood, and that's where the Army trains all of its engineers. Even if you're going into boot camp to go to be an engineer in the Army, you usually go through Fort Leonard Wood. So it was their recruit training, and but they have all the services. So the Air Force and the Navy and the Marines joined with the Army to train up their engineer equipment operators. If you're running a rough terrain forklift or a dozer or whatever, we had my detachment had 300 permanent personnel, and they were all the instructors and on and so forth. And then we had rotating through. Sometimes we had up to 300 more, 300 or more Marine students right out of boot camp leave. They came to us to learn how to drive a truck or operate equipment, learn to be a surveyor, a welder, those sort of things. Anything you could get dirty with. uh, was part of our specialties. 13 different specialties.
Yeah, so you were the Marines have that, and with the Seabees have something, and the Army Corps of Engineers is another one, right?
Correct.
Basically the same, or
Well, the Army has the widest number of activities there, but they'd have a chunk of their soldiers that were doing just like the Air Force and the Navy, Seabees, training up young sailors or airmen on how to operate equipment, heavy equipment, licensing on those, and mechanics for diesel mechanic. The surveyors and welders. We had a lot of welders come through, and that was a lot of fun to see them. But as I was a lieutenant colonel, had the largest inter service detachment. There was a CB lieutenant, 03, and a Air Force 03. And so when the general decided he needed more esprit de corps on his base, he highlighted us. And in a staff meeting, we'd always sit up in the nosebleed session, the Navy and I, and he pointed to us and said, "Sing your service song." So I was singing from the halls of Montezuma over probably 30 uh, Army staff members there on this command, of which I was the sole Marine officer in the group. But so he wanted to show his esprit de corps by marching 26 miles from Fort Leonard Wood to Rolla, Missouri, which is the next biggest town. I don't know if anybody's heard of Rolla. Probably nobody's heard of Waynesville, Missouri, unless you went through boot camp at Fort Leonard Wood. Well, he said, "Nelson, I want you to volunteer to head up the inter service detachment that's going to march." And they were all volunteers. And so we had about 75, about 50 some Marines. They were all staff. We didn't have the students do this. And the rest were other services. And so we'd march that 26 miles. And nobody fell out of our inter service detachment. I did happen to look in our safety vehicle that followed our unit when we were at an ad halt one time, and Doc says the van's full. And I go, "What?" Because in my mind, I hadn't lost any Marines yet. And so I go back there, and they're all soldiers. I did get them a ride, but not in that vehicle was set up for that inter service detachment. So we did a lot of inter service play, and it was I still have several of those soldiers on my Christmas card list, which are real precious to us. We had a good experience.
yeah, you do have a camaraderie there once you in the service. I know I did too. But why did the Marines? What got you into the Marines? Why did you go into the Marines?
Why did I go join the Marine Corps?
Yeah.
Well, there's part of it is our motto is Semper Fidelis, always faithful. And that is an ethos, a calling. Some guys go to work in the morning. The Marines, in my experience, don't. They're called to work, and if they don't see that right away, it seems to work its way out in your first stress. The word "can't," I had to look that up in a dictionary after I retired. It's not part of our vocabulary. And it's been we've carried that on into my retirement occupations, either as a school teacher or actually went to Bible school after I retired from the Marine Corps, and then was called back to my wife's hometown of Pierce. That's why I'm calling you from Pierce, Idaho. And it's a small town of 500. Here a couple of years as a school teacher, taught math, being an engineer. And then pastored actually with a local congregation. And then along came Idaho Youth Challenge Academy. And I think you probably wanted to hear some about the.
I definitely wanted to hear about that because I know a lot of Marines, not only Colonel Oliver, but a lot of them. And there's the Marine Corps League, and they always talk about the Marines build men, and the Marine Corps League has a mission that keeps things going, And I do like people like yourself. I've done a lot of interviews with different veterans who, once they get out of the service, they never stop. You have that commitment. It's like me. I've been doing this. I've been out 40 years, and I do salute. I do radio. I visit the schools, and and I heard about what you did and out back, and I want you to tell me about the youth corps. And then I understand your son is in there too, right?
Well, my son it joined the Marine Corps, similar program 22 years before or after I did. He went through the same ROTC program. He did well. He's a civil engineer. I was an agricultural engineer, and did fine. He actually met his future wife, in the same living area that I met mine. And
Really?
22 years after my wife Colleen and I were married in the little town of Moscow, Idaho, University of Idaho. There, uh, my our oldest son and another great family's oldest daughter were joined, and they've been married 20 some years now. No, I'm sorry, 20. They're on 25 years now. But he went into the Marine Corps as a CH-46 or a helicopter pilot and served his whole time flying. Uh, my son Joshua actually went to Iraq, went to Afghanistan, Afghanistan with the British. He was on an exchange tour. He was over there flying the British Sea Knights, and he had a good experience with the British. His actual co-pilot was from Australia, and I believe his crew chief was from another British Commonwealth nation. So that was a good exchange for him. And he had more combat time and more time at seas than I ever did. I was more in the getting them prepared. I had that Marine Wing Support Squadron. As soon as I gave it to the next command, they went to Afghanistan. But I know they did well over there because some good times we had in the field. Retired, went to Bible school, came back to our small town of Pierce, 508 people, taught school for a little bit, mathematics, and then I was on city council actually. And along came the National Guard Youth Challenge Program. And everybody listening to this from any state, look up the National Guard Youth Challenge Program, because there's one in Florida, an outstanding unit there at Camp Blanding, Florida. Good people up there. What it is a quasi-military environment, and they put a high school in there. So kids 15 and a half to 18 that are near falling out of high school or have dropped out, have lost their way. I like to say they have way too many of those youthful distractions. And probably several listening to this veterans program can think about youthful distractions until you get an NCO. There's something about the way a sergeant can explain things to a private or PFC that are crystal clear. And I saw that.
They get your attention.
Yeah. And I saw that need in my, when I was teaching public high school. I'd tell some of the boys, especially, okay, you can be in charge of your life for 23 hours a day, but when you're in this math class, you're going to toe this objective and this expectations. Some of them still tried to rebel against Mr. Nelson, previously Lieutenant Colonel. I had an expectation in that math class. It was a frustration, and along came Youth Challenge Program. You bring them in. There's a third of the program that's cadre, and this is a great opportunity for previous service that might want to join a National Guard Youth Challenge Program as a staff. They watch the kids 24 hours a day. They're cadets. It's not a boot camp. It's a very structured quasi-military environment. So there's a lot of military to it, but we're not expecting them to go out and fight wars. We're expecting them to complete high school. Not necessarily during the 6 months they're with us, 5.5 months, but follow on. And then we keep track of them for 1 or 2 years, making sure the cadets are doing what they promise they're going to do. I had a great time at that. I was actually what they called programs. So my third of the unit up here was going out and recruiting them. I had a great staff. Go out and recruit the cadets, tell them about the opportunity to get back on track, bring them in. We had case managers and counselors to try to keep them on, but the actual teaching them how to march, teaching them how to do creative calisthenics, I'll say. And they did a lot of that until they found the structured, narrow way to get in there and do their their high school.
So
It's a
I'm sure
great
you
program.
have some success stories, right? Some, that you're proud of with the kids.
We got many success stories, and a couple that come to mind is a young lady that I uh, I interviewed her. Happened to interview this one. I interviewed a lot, but I had other staff interviewing potential candidates for the program, and I talked to her parents beforehand, and then we were at one of the armories in Idaho, and we had an interview and sat down there. Well, this young lady had attempted suicide 8 days before, or 7 days before I met her. 7 days, and I interviewed her and looked her right in the eye, and she was impressive. She wanted to change, and I looked at her and I said, "Young lady, do you want to live?" "Yes, I want to live." And mainly her way she was so despondent upon herself was she's being bullied in a public high school. She just was lost in her way to go forward. So I didn't know it at the time, but found out that her dad was actually permanent personnel down at the National Guard base in Idaho here with the Idaho Military Division. I got to friends with him, but first I had to convince my CO that she should come into the program. And my director looked at me and he's looking at her app. He says, "Seriously, Harv? Seriously, this girl tried to commit suicide 7 days ago." I said, "No, sir, that's old news. That was actually 8 days ago." And I said, "She's going to make it." She came in, about a third of the program is females, two-thirds male. She did well. She did well. She saw the opportunity. She ended up getting her credits to get back on track. And when the parents said she was coming in, there's no way she wanted to go back to that same high school. They said, "Well, we can find another high school for her, but it's up to her." Well, by the end of the program, she wanted to go back to that exact same high school. She went back there, finished as graduated, and she had a rear view mirror shot of that high school in her rear view mirror when she completed the program. She's
Oh,
on
that's
one now.
great.
She's doing tremendous. But during all of this, she hadn't graduated yet. I was down in Boise at the National Guard base, Idaho Military Division, and I hear my name being called. Well, it's her dad sitting at his desk working away. He says, "Harv, come here. I want to show you something." So he lifts up his laptop and he shows me this beautiful young lady. That was her senior picture. That was taken after the academy. Thinking back in your mind, prior to that, they were making sure they had a watch on her so she wouldn't commit suicide. And one time they had to take her to the hospital, get her stomach pumped out. That's one young lady. There's been over 2,100 graduate from the program now. I retired from there at in the end of, or middle of 23, but it's phenomenal. Everybody has a reason for coming there, and everybody has an opportunity and a hope. And the mission is intervene in. You think of that, intervene in the lives of youth that are falling out of high school. That's just
Yeah. Sometimes all we need is a handout, to lift us up. That's
yeah.
great. I like programs like that. I'm gonna hang on one second. I want to show Abby. Come here, Abby. I keep bending down. I don't know if you could see that, but I have this. I'm home. This is Abby.
Abby, your pup
Abby,
there.
she's a trained Sasquatch chaser. I moved down here to Florida. We have not seen a Sasquatch yet. Anyway, she keeps bugging me, so I had to put her up here.
Okay.
But continue with your story. So you had a lot of success. What is this with the Outback? Tell me about the Outback.
Well, the Outback is actually my wife and my business, and it's a cabin rental business in Pierce, Idaho. Now, Pierce is now the reason Pierce existed, two reasons. In 1860, they discovered gold here, and the population skyrocketed. And the gold ran out, and the population went down. They probably wrote 2 or 3 obituaries for our town. And like Mark Twain, they keep writing obituaries for Pierce, but it's still running. That it was 1860. We had timber. huge white pine timber, and the came in the late 1800s. The timber from this part of Idaho helped build all those wooden barracks you see around from 19 or in the 1940s in preparation for the and Pierce is a place people have always come to change their lives. The miners, the timbermen, the CCC boys, Civilian Conservation Corps that Roosevelt sent to this area, and so we have our little business. We have 18 units. Some of them are originally Potlatch Timber Company bunkhouses that have been modified into cabins, and so that's what we rent. The Outback is just a entrepreneur here to rent people, and that's a plug. OutbackIdaho.com is our website if you're interested in seeing that.
So you're keeping busy, I see.
Yeah, retired twice. It doesn't catch hold. Just like you, Bob. I see that you said you're retired, but you're reaching out to veterans every week, twice a week, in a variety of manners. So I applaud you for your outreach.
Well, I used to do a lot in the veterans community. I passed command and release. By the way, I am an affiliate member of the Marine Corps Combat Correspondence Association. Thanks to Colonel Oliver. If you check out my YouTube show, you'll see a lot of Marines on there, you know, from World War II all the way up. But yeah, I got started up in Connecticut where I was. I was a commander of a Legion post and came down here and started educational programs. I was Lakefront TV, which was a local TV channel. And then I left there, and the lady sitting next to me here, who just called you on the phone, said, "You got to do a YouTube show," because I left there, and now I'm still working. So,
Yeah.
but it's an honor. I get to meet people like yourself who are making a difference. Story about that young lady. That's really what it's all about. I know you're very active in the church and the town. All
Yes.
500 of you.
And my health, well, they needed somebody to be the assistant fire chief, so I couldn't say no there too. So that's my current position with the city, and that's exciting. It's all volunteers in a small town, and you're in a small town when you dial a number and it's the wrong number, but you still have a good conversation.
Yeah.
You know those folks.
Well, there's something good, a lot of good things to be said about a small town,
Yeah.
No. So, uh, anything in particular you want to talk about with your service in the Corps, where you were or something? There was something about some flags.
Oh, yeah. Colonel Oliver might have let you in on that. So,
Yeah, the colonel gave me a little insight about you.
So we're 600 to 900 Marines on board Fort Leonard Wood, and every week I'd have usually start the week I'd have my company commanders come in there and talk about their specialty, how they're doing, and the XO took a call. Excuse me. So he comes into the office and he says, "I said, yes, XO, what's up?" "Well, there's a couple issues, and we're probably culpable in one of them." "Oh, what's that mean?" "Well, this is a Monday morning. The U.S. flag that is usually flown in front of the Howard Johnson's motel in town was missing. And there's also a Marine Corps colors on top of the Pulaski County Sheriff Deputy's repeater antenna, which was, I don't know how many feet above the Waynesville water tower. And so they had to climb up the ladder, somebody who put it there, obviously a Marine, climb up the water tower and then shinny up the repeater antenna to get the flag up there. And it was like precarious. Well, so we find out who it was. And I think he'd be fine with me saying his name. There was a Private Faircloth, a U.S. Marine, Native American heritage, and he and his buddies, I don't recall the other ones, but Faircloth was in charge of this Liberty fire team as they went out. they were probably a little bit inebriated, and they see the for some reason they had a Marine Corps colors in their possession, and they walked by the motel, and this U.S. colors was uh, tattered and worn, so they took it down because it was unserviceable. They had an appropriate ceremony to dispose of the colors, and they were telling Sergeant Major all this, and he was having a hard time keeping a straight face. But I mean, I had a brigadier and a major general down my back. Why is this happened out in our town? And you can see public relations between the fort and the civilian community were in a bad note. So okay, and the sergeant major, God bless him, he says, "Don't worry, I got this, sir. We'll get it covered." So he dressed the Marines up in their blues, went out there with a new American flag, had a whole formation and a proper raising up the colors at the Howard Johnson Motel, and they thought we were golden. They thought we were great. Okay. Waynesville Sheriff Department was still pretty upset that we had a colors flying on their repeater antenna, could knock it down anytime. I personally didn't want to send my Marines back up that flimsy thing sober, so the Fort Leonard Wood had a structural fire engine ladder truck, great big long. I don't know how long the ladder was. I should as a fireman, but they got that out there. Got the slightest built fireman, stuck him on the very end of that ladder. It was fully extended, and he had a boat hook. He got that boat hook, wrapped it around the flag, and got the colors down. Gave it back to the sergeant major. We put that in a frame and put a little plaque on it and presented that to that fireman later in another ceremony. And that appeased the civilians, certainly, and it all became a big joke, especially I think at my going away, the general or somebody might have given me a picture with that fireman taking the colors down off the Waynesville water tower. So that was one experience at Fort Leonard Wood. I told you about the hiking with the detachment and singing the song. We tend to make an impact wherever you give a Marines a beachhead. The rest of the natives are gonna know we're there.
Yeah. Like I said, I know a lot of Marines from World War II. A guy named Bill Cumba was a very good friend of mine. He's on my YouTube. He is with the Lord now. He was a Pelu in Okinawa, and he got 3 Purple Hearts. I want to give him a 4th one. He says, "Nah, I wasn't wounded enough." Toughest little man I ever met. He was a dear friend. But yeah, that's a great story about with the flag and everything too. So
When we were in ROTC, when I was in ROTC, we'd have celebrations, Marine Corps ball, Navy ball, that sort of thing, and we get some of the local whoever we can to come in and be the speaker. We had a retired Colonel Hansowitz, who was also a veteran of Peleliu. And he'd tell the story of, I don't know if anyone's ever heard of Chesty Puller, but Chesty
yeah.
Puller was the battalion commander on Peleliu when Colonel Hansowitz, or maybe he was regimental and Colonel Hansowitz was a battalion commander. And Hansowitz tells the story when he radioed back when Chesty was on there saying, move forward. And he radioed back and he said he's at like 95% casualties. There's no one left to move. And Chesty Puller told Hansowitz, "Well, you're not dead yet. Move." So he did. And it was down to about a platoon or less of Marines that were able to fight. But Hansowitz said he moved forward and because he didn't want to face the colonel or the regimental commander in the back named Chesty Puller.
Yeah. Bill Cumba, when he told me about Pelu, he says that there was no going to the rear because there was no rear. It was just an island miles long, and he did a show. They came over and they did a movie that was Once We're Enemies, it was called, and where he went back and an army guy who was with the tanks went back there like 70, 80 years later, whatever it was, and they went through the caves and everything. It's on my YouTube. You got to watch it because being a Marine, you'd love Bill Cumba and what he did. And my partner over here, she got to interview him when the Japanese government came over to interview him. She was there for that too. So
Wow.
yeah, a lot of I love military history, and I love what veterans do like yourself who get involved, and you make the world a little better place. You know what I mean? I'm
Well,
proud of
I might be a little slow on the uptake, but I'm starting to watch a salute uh, YouTube. I've kind of discovered YouTube lately and starting to watch some of those good interviews you've had, Bob.
Tell your friends in Idaho. We need viewers in Idaho. Like and subscribe. We're not for profit. We need all the help we can get. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, great.
Well, it was good seeing you. I mean, we talked on the radio, but now I get to see you. You are not a bad looking guy, you know.
Well, I did. Colleen, my wife, got a hold of me and made sure I had a proper shave, my beard. You
Yeah.
know, Marines, when they retire, almost all of us grow a beard because we were too young to support whiskers when we went in. So had to.
Now, you not only served, but your son served, and from what I saw in the bio that I got, you got a grandson, right?
I do have a grandson, Caleb Nelson, who's Corporal Caleb Nelson, who served one hitch, and as he went in, you never quite know your MOS when you're going in, but he wanted to be infantry. He ended up being light armored infantry, and he was a driver on a LAV 25, which is a great little armored vehicle. And when I was a captain, I had a company of light armored vehicles. As an engineer, the opportunity showed up, and my CO said, "You got it. Let's go." And the only negative part of that was we were on Okinawa. There's not a lot of maneuver room on Okinawa with light armored vehicles, but we were able to go up into Camp Fuji and Korea and other places. It was good. But Caleb is a good young fella. He's served his. I told him he served his first hitch, and he says, "I'm not re-enlisting, Grandpa," but he's actually making holsters now at a company. So he's back in Idaho making holsters. His dad, 22 years Marine Corps, retired lieutenant colonel. His last position was XO of Marine Corps Air Station Iwakuni in Japan, and he's actually my son. Should brag on him a little bit. He got a call from one of his Marine buddies, and this fellow said, "Hey Josh, are you ready to deploy?" He goes, "Sure. What are you talking about?" Well, this company that makes reconnaissance drones had Josh come out and be a liaison officer as they incorporated the drone into a Muse, and that's Marine Expeditionary Unit activity. So for a season, he's still out on ship every 6 months. He goes back out on ship.
So every Marine Corps birthday, the family gets together, huh?
We we try if we're in the
Yeah.
same grid square, certainly. And my son says it's great being on ship. You can wear a beard and a polo shirt with a company logo and talk to anybody you want. You don't have to be a spit and polish and only be in the officer quarters. He's having a
Yeah.
great.
Yeah. Well, I want to thank you for coming on Salute. Is there any one thing you want to talk about or a message you want to send out to the young people about being in the service?
Well, yeah, the key point there is service, and service is not a job. And I used to be a little maybe prideful in that who would ever talk to the National Guard, or who would ever talk to other services when you got Marines on your left and your right flank. Well, then along came this National Guard Youth Challenge Program, and there are some wonderful people about doing their mission. And in this Youth Challenge Program across the nation, there's 40 some of these units across the nation. It's the National Guard headquarters also is a good place to look if you want information on it. But it's a great opportunity. An opportunity if the door's open or if the door's there, walk through it and take that on. When you're young and you can do it, get that experience because it's going to change you. Whether you're an airman, sailor, marine, or I guess they call them space. I don't know what they call the spacemen now, but the
It's called Space Force. I don't know what they call
space
it.
forcemen. But you get in there, you learn everything you can. I told this to my grandson, and he seemed to. You learn everything you can in that MOS because that opportunity is only coming through once. And then you're fighting for the Marines or the sailors or the airmen or the National Guardsmen on your left and your right. And make sure can't is absent from your vocabulary when you're doing that because that mission is essential. And young people can do it. Like this National Guard program, I told you I was on city council when the idea came to town. They were looking for a building. Well, we had a elementary/junior high school building that we'd closed down because when the mill closed, the town went from 1,200 down to 500 again. And so we joined forces for school with the town next to us. The But I heard about it. I had to be part of it because I knew it would work. Because there's something about that relationship between a young person under guidance from a staff NCO or an NCO that's going to make his life so much better, and he's going to see the track and produce the track. A picture in my in my mind, I wish I'd taken a picture of it, was as an engineer, we had forward operating bases. We had fuel farms out there, and the helicopters would come in, and they were called FARPs, forward arming refueling points. They'd come in, get a new load of fuel, and off they'd go on their mission. Well, you know what? A helicopter comes down has quite the rotor rush. I guess it is. Anyway, it's blowing, trying to blow you over. Well,
Yeah.
here comes helicopter. It's set down. We skids are on the deck. Fuelman supposed to come out there with the hose to give him some fuel. Rotors are still going. Here's a lance corporal, kind of slight of frame, trying his best to move forward, and he could hardly overcome that wind. Right behind him, think of it, a staff NCO had his hand on his stacking swivel or on his coat, pushing him forward. He wasn't doing the job for him, but that's such a good picture of what the military is. There's an older one that wants you to complete your mission. You give them the heart to do it, and America's going to be stronger for it.
I agree wholeheartedly. I went in at 18 years old, during Vietnam, and I learned so much. And being in the service, I don't care what branch of the service, you mature, you grow, and there's a lot of doors that can open. And then there's guys like you who keep the doors open afterwards
Yeah,
and help younger people. And I applaud you for that, my friend.
it saddens me some that there's so many veterans come out and they've been in that environment and they can't find that environment again to thrive, and so they might give up looking for jobs. There are so many occupations out there that might not know it yet, but they need a lance corporal or an airman or a sailor because we come with that integrity and can do and willing to be on a team. They just need to open their doors. I'm telling industry, open your doors for these veterans that have the capabilities to be trainable too. Like I asked a construction outfit here in Idaho once because I was trying to get some cadets hooked up with occupations after the school. What do you need? Should we tell them about measuring? Do you need us to do classes on nailing and basic tools? No. You teach them how to show up on time and ears open. I'll teach them the rest. You show up, you give me a good day's work, that construction contractor or whatever, they'll teach you the rest. So for our veteran brothers and sisters, go find a place where you can show up and you're available to do a good day's work. And you've
There
got
are a lot of
career.
companies, there are a lot of companies and businesses that do hire vets.
Yes.
And I did 31 years in the line gang. And I came out of the service and the electric company I was a veteran, got right in, and I had a great career with being a lineman in the power company. Yeah, you're
Excellent.
absolutely right. It opens up a lot of doors.
And even though I retired from the academy, I still give a 12-hour class over 4 days on basic homeowner electrical. So I got a kind of the same spark going there with the basic wiring, switches and outlets, and light bases, and tying into your circuit breakers. So it's fun. There is occupations. Every vet should be out there because they're worth a lot.
Yeah, yeah. Well, Harv, I thank you for doing this show with me, the interview, and I thank you for all you do. You got to be one proud guy. You got a son and grandson, and you're all serving in the military because this country is all about the military. It's the ones who makes this country.
Well,
My opinion, my opinion. But it's time to say goodbye, and
okay.
I talk to you about it unless there's something else you want to mention.
No, Marines usually sign off with a Semper Fidelis, always
Oh,
faith.
okay, so I told you how we do this on salute, right? You ready?
Correct. Got it.
All our veterans out there, our active military and their families, we salute you for all you do. Till next time.
Till next
Thanks,
time.
buddy.
Thank you, sir.